things are out there. I mean, I'm delivering one of them to you right now. You know, I am one of the people who can look at a complex derivative and understand it. And I could also tell that the people who were writing these things did not understand it. And the people they were working for didn't understand them. So, you know, what's wrong with that picture? If you can't understand it, you can't explain it, then maybe you shouldn't be selling it. So, we have the dilemma we're in. How do we get higher quality decisions to be made? Well, I have a lot of ideas about that. But it's not easy. When you pass legislation, you have to realize that the legislation is not going to be carried out by people like you. I have gotten legislation adopted in Congress, and it mostly got screwed up because one of the first problems you run into is that when you hire people to carry out legislation, you have to just put out an ad and take whoever walks in the door that passes the General Services examination. You have to hire by the numbers. You're not getting true believers. You're not getting people who are particularly well trained in the subject area of the legislation. You're getting people who can pass, get an exam to get a GS level. That's intended to prevent corruption, to prevent patronage. Well, it doesn't. You don't get specific patronage, perhaps, being able to pick and choose who you're going to hire for particular jobs, but as the Democrats have discovered, you get a general patronage by passing legislation that hires a whole bunch of people that then feel that they want to vote for Democrats in order to get even more jobs of the same kind, or get their larger budgets and so forth, which enables them to get promoted and bigger pensions. And so you create a general patronage system, even if you don't have specific control for, picking and choosing particular individuals. Back when I was in the military, we had tried to avoid the problem by reassigning people regularly, especially officers. An officer would stay in a particular duty station at most 3 years, usually less time than that. The idea was to avoid empire building. You keep moving people around, you keep reassigning them. Don't leave anybody in one position for too long. That is a crude way to try to deal with the problem, but it has its merits. And one of my proposed reforms for the civil service is to keep rotating people around from job to job so nobody stays in a job for too long. That also needs to be done among staffers for Congress. Now, a lot of people have called for term limits of members of Congress, but I point out all that would do is make staffers more important. Yeah. And what you really need to do is to have a rotation among staffers. Let each one stay long enough to acquire skills, but not in any one position, so that they don't have a chance to develop these networks of cronies that then become the real power. I also discovered, when I was living on Capitol Hill, I lived 6 blocks from the Capitol, I would sometimes hang out in local clubs. One of them was called, and it's still there, the Hawk and Dove. Mm-hmm. I could sit at a table and be within earshot of another table where I could hear congressional staffers meeting with their handlers. And interestingly enough, the handlers did not seem to be the lobbyists of private firms. They mostly seem to be executive branch agencies, especially, and I got the distinct impression, CIA. So you had federal agencies, perhaps the CIA, developing personal relationships with staffers in Congress, inducing them to do what the agencies wanted. Now, in that kind of situation, who's working for whom and to what end? I think if most people could see what I saw, they would become rather disturbed. They were certainly an education for me, and one of the reasons why I came back and ran for Congress. But it was a kind of learning experience that would be very difficult to achieve in any other way. You don't learn that kind of thing. You don't learn what I learned in college or university or even in a government job, most government jobs. You just have to get out there and become involved in the process and watch it from the inside. And sometimes eavesdrop on the next table.
Do a little spying of your own.
Yes. Well, one of the favorite things, sort of favorite things, a lot of what happens in Washington happens in cocktail parties and similar get-togethers. Well, a lot of the actors, the players, as we call them, were attractive women. Lobbyists, spies, whatever. Most of them were not attached. So I would occasionally be called to serve as an escort. Back in those days, it's no longer true, but in those days, it was considered normal for men and women to appear in pairs at these things. So my lobbyist, spy, whatever, female type would invite me to be her escort so she could show up with a guy. We wouldn't leave together. We'd show up together, and she'd go do her thing trying to button this congressman or senator or whatever, and I would be doing similar things, trying to talk about my favorite legislation or whatever. Well, we'd occasionally had some interesting conversations as we were driving to the event, and I got a lot of insight into how all that worked. Now, when I say spy, I don't mean spy for a foreign government. Mostly spies for other special interests, trying to figure out what the opposition was doing, so they could head off the opposition. And frankly, I think most of the gals were using sex as one of their tools. Couldn't prove it, they didn't admit to it, but...
But you didn't do that?
I didn't do that.
Okay,
no.
Just making sure.